Herb, what are we looking at here? This is probably the coolest conference table I've ever seen in my life.
it's I'm so appreciative. A guy named Ryan Hasen from over in Western Canada built this for us. And I saw he posted a picture of a table he built for his dad, who's also a contractor. And amazing woodworking guy. I mean, just a genius with woodworking. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, I'd like to see if you'd be interested in building a table for us. And he said, I can't, he like immediately got back to me. He said, I can't believe you're asking me this because there's a piece of this down there. He said, I was running around my office with my iPad going, look at what this cool project these guys are doing. I'd love to build this. And so, this young guy, he's maybe 30 years old now, 31, just love this kid. I mean, from my heart, I love this kid. And so I just sketched it out on my Remarkable pad. I had like 3 pages and sent it to him. And he came back with some drawings. And we weren't sure how long it was going to have to be, but this room accommodates it well.
Well, we were talking before we got started. The thing that makes it so cool to me is story is something that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a conference table that clearly has laid out a story. Can you tell us the story?
Yeah, so the story starts with this young boy here loading sawdust from his dad's sawmill in Alton, Maine onto a horse-drawn wagon, and he's going to deliver that around, I call it the neighborhood, but all the neighbors are like a mile apart, right?
Yeah.
But he's delivering sawdust to go in the ice boxes. Back then there was no refrigeration, so he had ice boxes. And then it kind of follows a narrative. Shortly thereafter, he used his Uncle Rufus Storman's truck to go around up in the area where he grew up. There's sand everywhere. So he'd go around in the spring and shovel the truck full and go back to the neighbors again and fill in the potholes that had developed in the driveways. Now, fast forward a year or two, he bought an REO Speedwagon dump truck. That's actually a thing, not just a band.
Yeah.
And then he bought this in 1930, he bought this, it's called a Thew, T-H-E-W, double-aught shovel, and I've still got the invoice for this, or actually the build specs on it.
Those are like the shovels that they used in the Panama Canal.
Yeah, stuff like that, yeah. And this kind of tells you the stories we go down through here.
Yeah.
Like when we talk about our purpose and values, what tools they had to work with compared to what we have now. And so that's kind of like the 1930s, and then we move ahead and we go to the 40s, 50s, 60s, some 70s, got into some tractor trucks and then some scrapers, and then so old Alice Chalmers scrapers, and then Terex scrapers, Euclids. This bulldozer actually has 2 engines in it, side by side.
I see it there, yeah.
That's a machine that literally is, if you were standing behind it, you could see all the way through it, front to back.
How in the world did he create such detail?
So he bought these models. Most of these models he could buy, but this shovel here and that old one, he handmade those.
Wow.
3D printed them.
That is crazy.
So now we're in the in the period where he starts doing some of the interstate work.
Okay.
And then this is now we jumped.
That period there's like 70s?
40s, 50s, 60s.
40s, 50s, 60s. Okay.
And then we're 70s and 80s, some 90s. And what this is a rock cut that he's taking out. And he's got a picture. There's a picture of me with my grandfather in a similar, with a machine like that. My first job as superintendent. So Ryan put my grandfather and me down there.
That's pretty cool.
And he also, I told him, when he made this online, he was posting pictures online on his Instagram page every day. And I said, I would be the kid standing in the woods watching what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. You are.
So he put me in the woods there. And if you look really close, he's dropped a few deer in here and there, whatever. But you can see he's done such great detail. Now we're in the fall foliage season, and now we're moving into the 2000s, 2010s, and this is meant to look like one of our wind power projects that we have, and you can see over here on the wall kind of one of the projects we did. And then we move into the 2000 late teens, early 20s, and this is the project that Ryan saw.
It's a pretty cool project.
Yeah, and what we did on this project is, if you look down, you can see this is an 1,800 foot long tank that's built in 8-foot sections.
Wow.
And so we've got this gantry crane that comes down here. They're delivered here. He picks them up, brings them down here, drops them, and then slides them home. In this machine, you can see we took the tracks on this machine, we customized it to make
So
it.
your company customized this machine?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we made it 39 feet wide, so he could travel the length of this in case we needed to get in here. You can see the sheeting that's all around this. This machine is driving the sheeting ahead of the excavation.
Wow.
And this was all next to Back Bay in Portland. You can see the clay in the dump truck here, how gummy and sloppy it is. That's what it was. I mean, it makes Play-Doh look firm. So this is Back Bay in Portland. You probably will drive right by it. And just a really cool touch. There's a jogging trail all the way around it, and he recreated the fencing, everything, the safety fencing. If you look down here, you'll see, a couple guys looking at plans, and those plans are actually 1/50th scale plans of the real plans.
Wow.
And look at this generator with he's feeding a pump down there, but look at the extension cord coiled up and the traffic cones. This guy's here having a coffee. Mud puddle, that's just the way the photo was.
Wow.
And one great touch he put on, he said, "Do you mind if I put your grandfather up here just checking it out in the boat?" So we've got this picture of him in the boat there. And so that's what that is. And then we move ahead, and now we want to represent our Virginia work, our Southeast work also, and that's over there on the wall as well, the really red dirt. And so that's what we've got here. We're rebuilding a runway, or building a new runway. So we've got a couple scrapers over there picking the dirt up and taking it down to the end, putting in some under drain here on each side. The dozer's getting ready to come in, the grader's spreading the gravel on top, getting ready for the pavement. And again, you got a young lady there with a set of plans, and right beside the truck you can see a guy with the drone controls working the drone right here.
I see the drone right there on the table.
And from the time we commissioned this table to the time he delivered it was about 16 months. Wow. And I mean, the detail, all these people were 3D printed and hand painted. I mean, he's got, if you go on his Instagram page, I'll tune you into it.
Yeah.
Just incredible work this guy did. Wow. And I, like I said, I love this guy from the bottom, because his heart went into this thing.
I don't know how you can build something like this without your heart being in it.
Yeah.
I truly don't. Wow.
He said he had about 2,000 hours in it. Yeah. And then he sourced.
That's 40 hours a week for an entire year.
Yeah. Wow. So he sourced this, and he had a full-time job besides. He's an estimator for his dad's company.
Wow.
I'm trying to remember what wood this is, but it was sourced out of California. And he brought it here in four sections.
Okay.
He and his wife drove it here in a U-Haul from Manitoba.
Wow.
And we unrolled it here a couple years ago. He didn't know it. His dad reached out and he said, "Listen, I don't want to tell Ryan, but I'd like to be there."
Yeah.
And so we had this thing covered with a roll of paper, so you couldn't see in it. And his mom and dad were in the room there, and he was just about to unroll it. And I said, "Hold on a second, Ryan. I gotta get something." And I went in, and I opened the door, and his mom and dad come walking out. It was such a cool thing.
Wow.
But just such a great thing. What I always want our people to know 100 years from now is how this started.
Yeah.
And that it was always, every day for that 100 years, the hard work started.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
And our 100th anniversary book is titled "The Hard Work Starts Today." So.
What do the Navy SEALs say? The only easy day was yesterday?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at where he put the logo in the table there, and
Absolutely love that.
Yeah. And we've had some great meetings here. We have our board meetings here. We have, I shared here, the Sargent Leadership Academy, which is different from the Construction Academy. This is for leaders coming in, so they learn more about the organization, learn how to talk profit and loss and that sort of thing, because you don't get that when you come up out of college.
Yeah.
So And we just have a lot of meetings in here, and everybody loves it. And everybody says I wouldn't be able to pay attention to the meeting, but it's not that bad. You can,
Well, Herb, thank you for sharing us the story of this table.
Yeah.
And I know we've had a lot of conversations here over
Yeah.
the past couple of days, but can we sit down and have a real and honest conversation?
Let's do it.
Step up to the line.
I'll step up to the line with you.
I think awareness is something that is really important. You bring that up about this table being a gift from the Sargent family
Yeah.
to the organization. I remember when I became a project manager, and I love coffee. And so when I'm driving to a job, I'm buying a coffee somewhere, and I'm a little bit of a coffee snob, to be quite honest.
Well,
Just saying.
that's okay.
Yeah, thanks.
You've lowered your standards by coming up here, so you're going to be a coffee snob.
Actually, I already found all the good coffee joints here in Bangor,
All
Maine.
right.
One. But anyway, but I would be driving to a job, and I would inevitably buy myself a coffee about 10 or 15 minutes before I got there. And I remember I went with another guy, and we both grabbed coffee. He's in my truck with me. We get to the job site, and we're getting out to walk the job site, talk with the team. Project management, that's what you got to do. And we get out of the truck, and I put my coffee cup in the cup holder, and he's holding his. And I said, "Yeah, I don't want you to walk around with a cup of coffee in your hand." And he looked at me, and he's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "When we're walking around with coffee in our hands," I said, "it's bad enough if we're carrying, plans and be like, I'm going to look at the plans and point at the building, It's bad enough if we're doing that, but if we are holding a coffee in our hand while these guys are working, what perspective does that give them?"
Yeah, I mean, it sends a signal
It sure does.
that a lot of people, I mean, it's the awareness thing, and it sends a signal that a lot of people don't understand that they're sending.
Right, because we don't think about it.
And that's really important, because I think when you show up on a job and you show up in a way that people feel like you're empathizing with them
Yeah,
and their plight, whatever it might be, because there's always a plight.
yeah.
There's almost always a plight.
In our industry, for sure, there is.
And it's a rare day that the tempo just flies by and everything goes perfect the way you laid it out. That's a rare day. And so when you show up and you don't have your boots on,
Yeah,
or you don't have your vest, you don't, like we're trying to say, this is the culture we want to build.
yeah,
And if you show up not owning that culture, it's just to me, we talked about these values that another company has, and it's just like when you don't behave that way,
yes.
it makes everybody wonder what the hell else is going on in the background.
And then you won't get there.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what this is. If you're out there and you're a surveyor,
Yeah.
and you do a backsite,
Yeah.
if the backsite is 1 foot away, then your foresight is going to have some deviation to it. But if your backsite is 200 feet away and you hit that pin and then you swing your scope 180 degrees, it's so much more accurate.
Yeah.
And we're just so fortunate to have the backsite we have that Herb established
Yeah.
in the way he did his work back in 1926, and throughout. And a lot of what I've sought for, I'm the one that wrote the 100th anniversary book, and I was told I had to do it. And
It's funny how your teams tell you the things that you have to
yeah,
do.
it was good. So Tasha was the one that said, nobody's going to write this but you, so just get over it and do it. And so I did. And a lot of what I was in search of is meaning.
Come on.
And what I mean by that is Herb, this shovel that's shown here, or this sawdust, it had no meaning to him at the time.
Yeah.
It was just he needed to earn a little bit of dough.
Yeah.
When he did the sawdust thing, he was trying to buy a bicycle, and because there was no cars in the town that he grew up in,
Yeah.
and so he was trying to buy a bicycle. But what that first shovel of dirt in that old double-aught through Model Zero, what that has for meaning to us today is so much more than I think he ever dreamed it was. And then now the extension of that in what we do today
Yeah.
ought to be worth somebody else paying attention to in 50 years.
Come on.
Like, look at the meaning these guys put into the work.
Yeah.
And that's been a lot of what's kind of occupied my mind in the last year and a half, especially as I've been writing this book.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of reading and a lot of understanding different things, and I knew a lot of it, but he was 50 something years in business when I was born. So
yeah. Well, I think we were at a restaurant last night having a conversation, and you introduced me to some people, and they were asking me about what we do and how we do it, and I got to talking about something that I just love, and that's the story. The reality is brand building, marketing, building a company, talking with people about how to operate and what to do. None of it really matters without the story. And the reality is, if we can grasp the importance of telling the story, well, then you have people like Chandler who begin to know Herb.
yeah,
And then it helps them build upon their story. And then it becomes a legacy. You said the other night to me, you gave me a quote that I totally am gonna rip off and take
well, I
as
ripped
my
it
own.
off,
Yeah.
so you might as well know that.
But you said that legacy isn't what you leave people. Legacy is what you put into people. And I'll add to it a little bit more because I love to build. And so legacy is what you build in people. And this story, I'm sitting here and I love my seat because I can see the story on the wall behind you. I can see where your grandfather started. I can see where you are today. And I see it not only in the pictures, but in the brands. Like brands at Blackline, we are all about brands, because brands is how you tell your story and you do it effectively. And brands ring in someone's head. Like when you see a brand that's communicated well, you don't forget it. Like you don't. If you were in the store and you saw a soft drink can and it was red and white, you don't even need to read it. You know what it is. And so it's like the importance of story and how we tell it, I think matters so much, because when you tell a story brand in a right way, what you end up doing is uncovering who you are as an organization. And that really should be what we're all about, because when we do that, then people who identify with that, my experience in that, and the reason that we're having these conversations with companies like yours and wanting to continue to tell that story, is these are the types of stories that matter for the way to do business.
That's the example Herb set for us, in my opinion, and we try to highlight that in everything we do here. Now, when you walk in this office, the first thing you see is Herb as an 18-year-old in a small wooden motorboat.
Yeah.
And he's got his foot propped up on the seat in front of him, and you can see, it's very clear, the hole in the bottom of his shoe. His sole is worn out.
Yeah.
But when you look in the eyes of that young man in the boat, you see determination.
Yeah.
And you see, and a lot of the things Herb overcame in his life, there were many. You start out in 1918, the Spanish flu came through. Him and his mom both got the Spanish flu that killed 55 million people on the planet. They both got it, but survived. And then shortly after that, the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And then World War II, and then, President Kennedy shot, and various wars, various economic upheavals that, just in my own career, I've seen either 4 or 5, economic recessions.
Well, we were talking about this last night. They will come.
They are going to come.
You're going to see more. And I want to get into that a little bit because we weren't recording you last night.
Right.
But you said some things
of.
you said some things that were really good. And at some point today, I want to talk about the airplane, and I want to talk about altitude.
Okay.
Because I think that's an essential thing that companies, there are people out there that need to hear that. I need to hear that. We need to be reminded of that. But
individuals too. It applies on an individual basis as well.
Absolutely.
If you're flying at the treetops as an individual with no margins of safety in your health, in your finances, in your relationships, in your career, it's just that's disaster is going to come.
It's going to
and
come.
what we want is to create the margin of safety. And you've seen, Build a Life with us, and it's health, wealth, and career.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to focus on the whole individual, and make that so that they gain margins of safety and all, so that when a problem comes along, it stays a problem and doesn't become a crisis.
So we've talked a lot about the story of Herb, and we're here to celebrate a century of building.
Mm-hmm.
We're here to celebrate 100 years, and I think the coolest thing about that one individual, one person can make an impact and a difference is the reality that is the power of multiplication. And I look at these brands on the wall, and it starts out with H.E. Sargent. And then it goes to Sargent and Sargent. Then it goes to the Sargent Corporation. And then the last one, which is my favorite, and I see you wearing your ESOP in there, is Sargent. 100% employee owned.
Yeah.
And this story is important. And please don't feel, listen, if you're not an ESOP, there's nothing against that.
Right.
But that there is a concept about ownership. Whether you're an ESOP or not, you need to understand ownership. Because we all need to own the work that we do. We all need to own that. ESOP didn't exist when your grandfather started the company, but he understood ownership. And through the past 100 years, I would say that people understood ownership, and if they didn't, the leadership showed them a different way.
Yeah, he was really gifted in the way that he could address substandard work, put it that way. He never raised his voice. There was actually a reporter from New England Construction was here, and I think it was 1939, to interview him at his house.
Wow.
And his kids are bouncing around on the couch, and he's like, "Okay, kids, settle down." And the guy actually wrote, like, it's hard for me to picture this guy being on the job the way that we seem to witness management behave on jobs. We can't see him being hard against his crew. We just see him being the kind of guy that just communicates evenly and sets the expectation. And that's just the way he was. He just was always that way. And as a young kid that started out my life just a couple houses down from him, but then moved to Georgia with my mom about 8 years later. He just always stayed tuned into my life. And he was the kind of guy, the way I put it is, when you were with him, you're like, he makes you feel special.
Come on.
And then as you grow up and you see, you know what? That's just the way he makes everybody feel.
Well, and that, I think, is so important for us to use the term management. And I think words matter so much. I was just sharing with Chandler how I believe the definition and the meaning of words matter, and we need to be really aware of what we say and how we say it. And so you talk about how, management, I don't want to manage people. I want to lead people.
Yeah. It's a lot easier.
And I want the people on my team, I want leaders, not managers. I want, and that clearly is what you have here, clearly. And it's like that clearly is also what your grandfather was, and that is continuing to impact in people. And so it's like, what is it, in that when we need to harness what that is in making people feel special. Like it might sound soft and fuzzy, but the reality is it is so important because people need to understand that they have value. This podcast, we call it The Line, and we are encouraging people to step up to the line. Let me tell you what we mean when we say that. What we mean at Blackline, we say that we're here, our vision. And vision is something that you have and you look to for the future.
Right.
It's different than mission. And our vision is to lift the view of the skilled trades. Our mission at Blackline is to communicate the value of the men and women who do the work. And we do that by making people feel special, telling them that we care about what they do. Because here is the reality. what this work in the trades is undervalued.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
It is undervalued. These pictures in this diorama that we're seeing, this work, it gets covered up and people don't know that it was done, but they live the life that they can live because of the work that your grandfather has done, that the men and women have done on all of these different jobs. And that matters for society. And we need to highlight that.
And to that point, most people see the work we do as an inconvenience. When in fact it is the convenience.
I love that.
And we're building convenience for people. And it is disheartening, that that nobody flushes the toilet and sits there and reflects wistfully on how that was enabled, right? They don't think back and I wonder what went into this. And there's a lot of danger in the work we do. There's a lot of hazard in the work we do.
Yes.
And we do, I think, an exceptional job mitigating those hazards. So it is important, I think, to show people. And we have people come in this office, the Chamber of Commerce meetings and different things like that. The Rotary Club comes in and uses this room. And they can see now because it's on display here, not just for the sake of our employee owners, but also for anybody that comes in here. When we had an open house and people are milling around, they're like, wow, that project at the end where we've got an excavator widened out to 39 feet wide so we can travel back and forth hovering over a trench is like, seriously, you guys had to do that?
Yeah.
Because very few people will see that because that road was closed while we were doing it. So the only people that ever saw that work are the people that live right on the edge of the road.
Well, and that's why it's so important for us to tell the story,
right?
Because people don't see it. When I'd worked for almost 30 some years in the trade, in the electrical trade, and until we started Blackline, my wife, I'll never forget this. She said to me one day, she's following us on Instagram, and she's like, "Wait, is that what you've been doing for 30 years?" Because she'd never been to the job site.
Yeah.
She'd never seen what we do. And I had to tell her, I said, no, that was a heavy civil project. I was an electrician. We didn't do that cool work. And I didn't show her any pictures of the wastewater treatment plants that I worked in.
Yeah,
either.
right.
So, well, Herb, we're always, when I'm doing this podcast, I ask people a couple of questions. And so before we go a little further, just a softball question here for you. What is a tool or a piece of gear that you just cannot live without? You need to have it every day. You knew this was coming.
I knew this was coming, and I actually thought about it, but I think I've recanted. The tool that is most important to me is the heart.
Ooh, come on, tell me why.
I was going to say my remarkable tablet, but it's just it's just like, if it's gone tomorrow, I'm not going to miss it. I'll get another one, whatever. Yeah. But the tool, and not to turn the heart into a tool, but to turn the tool into a heart.
Come on.
And that's what gets us built. That's what gets us things built. That's what gets us things built the right way. That's what gets people built. Yeah. That's what gets, our employee owners built. With 600 people, we don't look at it like we've got 600 people that are counting on us. We look at it like if every person is a family of 4, we've got 2,400 people counting on us. And if we don't take that responsibility with a great degree of heart, then I don't know what we're building anymore.
And why?
Why? Yeah. Anybody can build a road, but I want to build the people that build the road. And I believe that's what Herb did. And that's why we've got people that have been in this company. I don't know exactly how many without going back to look, but we've got, dozens that have had 50 years or more with the business. Wow. We just had a guy that retired this past winter that started here. I'm 63 years old now. He started here when I was in 2nd grade. And that's just, why do people come and hang on to that? And it's not because there's a lack of options. Yeah. Anybody can go anywhere, especially these days. But, you talk to Chandler, our operator, who's been here, I think this is the 7th year, came through our academy in 2019. And, he's bought in. This guy's like, and I've talked to several of them, like, I'm a lifer.
Yeah. Oh, he is.
Because
he was already talking to me about what he wants his part of the table to say to the next generation.
Wow.
So, I mean, and one, I can't imagine how that feels for you.
Yeah.
But like he is, so I cannot get away from this employee ownership mindset because this Sargent is his company now.
Yeah, it
and
is.
he sees that. And that's what he is. He's talking to me, and he's talking to me about, listen, if I'm not intelligent about how I handle that piece of equipment, that tool or that gear, and that costs us money, that costs me money. Mm-hmm. He goes, if I handle it right at the end of the year, I make more money. And it's like, and I'm building a better company.
And when he takes that kind of approach, the value is contagious.
Well, and it should be. Well, let's just be real about that. You're talking about heart. That's what Herb started this with. You talk about him pouring into your spirit, and you've said that a couple of times to me, that he poured into your spirit. Other people played a part in building your body, but he poured into your spirit, and your spirit is your heart. I mean, we're not talking about the muscle that pumps blood into your body. We're talking about the spirit with which you live life and look at life and what you pour into the people. You're talking about the legacy that is going to live beyond you and your body.
Yeah.
And that's what, Herb's legacy has become your legacy. And we all put our own spins on it, just like Chandler will. But Herb's legacy is living on in Chandler.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's the meaning.
Yeah.
Right? When Chandler understands, like, he doesn't need to say, I got to be just like Herb.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about me. We're talking about my grandfather, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't have to say, I want to be like Herb. He just needs to live by those values, that we've been able to codify and put up on the wall. That I know a guy like Chandler and hundreds of others in our company look at those and they go, yeah, I can do that. Like this purpose.
Yeah.
I'm into that. And we've got a vision on the wall as well. And I think when our people look at it, they go, yeah, that's a vision that I can get behind. And, you talked about the alignment toward that vision is the key.
It is.
If you can't get people's, so it's one thing if you get people's vocation aligned in that vision, but if you can get their heart behind the vocation aligned with the vision, and then they start to look at each other like they're almost brethren instead of just co-workers and they're co-employee owners. And when you see someone, if the vision is we're going this direction, and you see somebody that's maybe pointed this way, to me that's a leadership problem. Like, listen, I just need to explain we're going this way, and I'd like for you to make the course correction to go this way because what you're providing right now is drag. And then,
I'm all for the airplane analogies. I can handle that.
And then you see people that are pointed this way backwards, the opposite, and that's real drag. That's like that's like the plane flying over the beach with a big banner behind it. That's except it's not a good banner. It's like I don't care. And I think it's important for us as leaders of the company and co-employee owners to point that out when we see it. We've tried to be pretty direct with people, respectful but direct, and let them know this is not conducive to success for you or for the business. And so we need you. Sometimes to me that's management. And I read a quote one time. It said, "Great bosses and great employees spare each other the agonies of management." And it's so true when you think about somebody that you never really have to manage. I mean, you have to manage information into them and tools,
Truly.
But you don't have to manage their behaviors. Man, what a great thing that is.
Well, I think what you're talking about there, and just to kind of tie it into your one thing and to your grandfather pouring into people's spirit, management without heart is management. It's not leadership. But when you bring heart into it, when you pour into the spirit, when you bring the spirit into it, then it becomes leadership. Because it's not about where you are in the now. It's about where you're going. There's an old parable that says people perish for lack of vision. And so if an organization doesn't have the vision and you're not thinking about where you're going, well, you won't be here in 100 years.
And I will say this. I mean, our core purpose and values were codified in 2018. We didn't have a ton of vision before that.
Yeah.
Would
you say a lot of things have changed since then?
Certainly part of our strategic planning in that year helped us kind of think more about vision and think more about how we as a company can strengthen. Warren Buffett talks about, I want to buy companies with economic moats. and like, can we create an economic moat?
Yeah.
But part of that is also a cultural moat. Like we want a cultural moat that is unassailable, that keeps our people safe inside our company without people being able to come in and, wheel a Trojan horse into our midst and say, I've got a better deal for you. And then, you find out 5 years later that was not a better deal. And, we've had some people leave. We've had to part ways with people. But we've had a lot of people leave and come back 6 months later and go, okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
And one thing I always wonder is, like, when you see the grass is greener somewhere else, why don't we fertilize this grass here?
Come on. Yeah.
Let's be a party of fertilizing this grass here. And then if you spend the time fertilizing and it's still greener over there, give it a try.
Yeah.
But it's people see opportunities and other companies and industries, have offered in, let's say, the last 40, 50 years, the other industries that have offered a better cultural prize than construction has, than the trades have. And, it was go to college, and I went for one semester and I said, this is not for me.
Yeah.
I'm going back in the ditch, and I did. So, but trying to set up a vision and a mission that people can say, yeah, that's what I want to do. I can get behind that. My heart can get behind that is I think really helped us a lot since 2018, since we codified that core purpose and values.
Yeah.
And, and they're not difficult. It's invest in people and do the right thing, hone your craft, and win in the field.
Yeah. I think that's really key. A lot of companies, they overthink it. Mm-hmm. There's an acronym I absolutely love, and it's not the band KISS, but the acronym is Keep It Simple, Stupid. And it's like, you don't need to have a lot of them. You need to have enough that people can remember, so that when I sit here and I talk with Chandler, I'm like, what's your favorite value? And he can just say it like that and tell me what it is. And it helps when it's a good one too.
Yeah. Well, we spend a lot of time, we open almost all of our meetings with, okay, before we start, we're going to go around the table. Tell us something you witnessed since the last meeting that is behavior that aligns with a core value.
Yeah.
And that just helps to drive them deeper. And we talk about them on our podcast regularly. We have shout outs on the podcast where employees can text in a shout out for coworkers that, is something that we call it pretty much leave things better than you found it.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. My father was saying that to me since I was 8 years old.
Yeah. And you started listening when you were 25.
32, but yeah, for sure. Maybe I really didn't start to listen or really understand it until I was telling my son that.
Yeah. He just gave you the thumbs up.
Yeah. I think a century of building, I saw that on your one post and your name. And it's like, that doesn't mean that it always goes right. Here we are sitting and people are listening, and maybe you just started a company, maybe you're operating a company, maybe you're at a place where it's really hard right now. And I think it's important. You and I were talking one time, and your values are the one thing that you say have been the same for 100 years. But the work, and we just looked at this table and this diorama that you have here, showing that those things change. And it's like, sometimes you've learned things that you haven't done right, that you wish you would have done differently. And that happens, but I don't believe that failure can happen unless you give up.
Right.
And so it's like, clearly you didn't give up. And I know that some of the things that we've talked about, that there were definitely some times where you were wandering or awake at night or whatever. But through that process, and when we were talking the other day, I shared with you a story about an older gentleman who told me how he learned how to run a company at this size, at this size, and at this size. Talk to me about, as you're building an organization over a century, which this is an important factor. You cannot build an organization over a century alone. There has to be a team system analogy. There has to be a team way. There has to be a culture that can carry you through, because that's the only way that you can do it. And one of the things that we were talking about, and I'm not asking for you to use any names or reveal anything, but talk through with me the process of, as you go through those different phases of a company. I think it's pretty valuable for people. We talked about Jim Collins and the right people in the right seats on the bus. What do you do when you come up with those hard situations and you have to deal with them for the vision to stay alive?
It's hard to have like a play card for that.
Yeah.
Because individuals are individuals, and
oh, that's good.
And I mean, there has to be clarity.
Yeah.
So if you start out with a soft foundation of what the expectations are, then that's on us, right?
Yeah.
So there needs to be clarity, and then there's a book out there called Necessary Endings, and
I've read it. It's
a great book, and it's really like if you set the expectation, you're very clear about what the expectation is, and have the conversations. Okay, this is the deal.
Yeah.
This is the deal. And I want to know from you, are you buying into the deal? And if they say yes, but then it doesn't show up that way, then, there's some pruning you have to do.
Yeah.
And I've begun in retirement here. I do a lot more thinking than I
really
used to do.
don't know if you can say that you're retired. You're still flying all over the country.
Yeah, but that's the fun part. But I've come up with this idea that if you take your organizational chart, and I got this concept from a guy named Forrest Dorman. He said the first thing we do when we go see a company is we go, okay, turn the org chart upside down.
Mm-hmm. Ooh.
And where is it leaking, and who's it falling on?
Wow.
And that was a really powerful way to look at it for me.
Yeah.
And I went just another step further, and I drew a bucket, and I've got a bucket analogy that I use. Like, this person is a bucket, and the task is what we pour into that bucket. And it depends on where it leaks.
Yeah.
If it leaks in the bottom, like if I say the bottom of this bucket is buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
It's work ethic, it's buy-in, it's values. And if you hire someone that has leaks in the bottom,
Ooh.
It doesn't matter how much you train, how much you upskill.
Come on.
When you pour this task into there, it's going to go straight through.
Yeah.
Now, we have some culpability in what we pour in.
Yeah.
So if we take just regular water, which has very low viscosity, and we just dump it through and it doesn't retain it all, that's kind of on us. But if we can take that water that we put in and we can make a potion of the right expectations, the right outcomes that we're looking for, and the information that's needed to do the job right, the specifications, all that stuff, and we can thicken what we pour in, then that has an impact too. So we have to be clear about what we're doing here. So that person now, and I posted on LinkedIn a bucket, and like, this is me as a high school football player. I was bought in 100%. So I didn't have any leaks in the bottom. But they wanted me to play outside linebacker, and they wanted me to key off the pulling guards, and I just wasn't good at it, And then after 2 games, I'd given up a lot of plays. Like, Herb, we're going to fill that hole in the side of your bucket.
Come on.
Because that's a skill hole. We're going to fill that hole in the side of your bucket, and we're going to take you out of there and put somebody else in that can read guards. But they wanted me to play because they knew I was bought in.
Come on.
And they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make you a nose tackle. Now, I'm a little guy for a nose tackle, but they knew my skill was to be quick, and I could just, all I had to do was go straight through. And so my skill building hole was very short in that respect. I filled that hole myself pretty quickly. And so that's kind of the way I look at this. Like, sometimes the people aren't going to upskill right. Even though they're bought in, they're not going to upskill the way we want them to. So I think we owe those people a real close opportunity to evaluate where they're failing
Yeah.
or where we're failing.
Yeah.
If what we're pouring in goes straight through, is it a capacity problem, a skill problem? Because even you might have somebody that's all bought in with all the right skills, but if we pour 2 buckets into them, it's gonna leak down onto the next layer of management.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the way we need to look at our people, not to turn them into inanimate objects, but just as an analogy for the way that capacity is both created and maintained.
Yeah. Why? Man, that's good. We could stop right now. I mean, honestly, this is good.
Well, it might not get any better. So.
Well, this is the cool thing about a century of building is there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good things to talk about because if you've gone through that time, chances are, the math bears out that typically there was vision and there was investment. And when you talk about the bucket, and I don't know your full analogy, but I always think a bucket is really interesting because if you handle the bucket right, it fills up and then it runs over and it pours out on other people. Mm-hmm. And that's really what Herb did.
Yep.
That's what's happening here at Sargent. The cool part is in having a conversation with Chandler, his bucket is filling up, and I know that he's pouring out on people. Yeah. And having those conversations. And you were even telling me before he came in here, all the people that want to pour into him.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about.
It's, when people see the bottom of your bucket it has no leaks.
Yeah.
They go, I'll help him fix the sides.
Absolutely.
I'll mend those holes. And when you're a person, a young person, or even somebody more advanced in age in a new role, when people see that you want to mend those holes in the side of the bucket with skills, with attention, they're more than willing to jump in and help take care of that with you. And that's what Chandler and dozens and dozens of these kids that have come through that academy. One thing I'm particularly proud of is in 2012, I could see, all right, it's now it's getting to the end of the recession, but, our workforce is about 10% under 25 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
Our field workforce. And that's 2 or 3 years later is when we said, okay, we're going to start this academy. And this is not a project for 2015. That's when we decided to do it. We've had our first one in 2016. And I talked to Kevin, our workforce advancement director, and I said, just know I'm not looking for results in 2016.
That's an important thing for you to tell your team member as a leader.
This is not about 2016. This is about 2026.
Yeah. And
so I mentioned 10% of our people.
Did you really say that back then? This is about 2026.
Right.
Wow.
This is it's going to be going on forever, but this is a project that we're not going to really see results for 5 to 10 years.
Wow.
And
boy, that's vision.
Well, you get to this point where finally you get as a company, you get some financial freedom, financial strength, financial margins of safety that gives you the freedom to start looking out 5, 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Before that, I was the guy that was, I'm just trying to, we're just trying to keep this plane in the air the next mile. Literally,
I wish that I didn't know what you're talking about, but I so do.
Yeah, I know, and that's why this to me this aviation metaphor is so strong. And when you think about it, when you get on a commercial plane, and they take off and they're going, it looks like they're going straight in the air.
Yeah.
And we're the service people.
Yeah.
They're all seated.
Yeah.
Because we haven't reached an altitude that's safe.
Come on.
Or a set of circumstances that's safe enough. If they brought the food cart out and the beverage cart out, it would roll all the way to the back of the plane. So we've got to stabilize the flight. We've got to get so we're in a position where we can now serve.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've been under duress in a way in building this, and I call it survival mode, and I was in it for a long, long time. So that survival mode is let's get to the altitude. Now we can serve. And the really cool thing is, as a fellow pilot, you'll get this that other non-pilots might not.
I'm really glad you called that out on air.
Yeah. Is that when you trim your airplane, it's trimmed for speed.
Yeah.
And if you add a little bit of throttle, you don't go faster. You climb.
Yeah.
If you take throttle off, you don't go slower, you descend. And the power of that to me is if you're a company or an individual out there and you've reached an altitude and you start feeling complacent, to me, you're pulling off the accelerator.
Yeah.
And what you're going to do is you're not going to slow down in the same spot. You're going to begin to descend. Same thing with a company. If your crew starts to feel that we've got 100 years behind us, dude. Think about General Electric or Boeing, or if you get complacent about your position, that's the same as taking throttle off.
Yeah.
And you're going to descend. You're going to give up altitude. And if you're a pilot, it's the three assets that pilots really give up grudgingly are altitude above you, or assets that are no longer useful to them, right? Altitude above you, runway behind you, and fuel that used to be in your tank.
Yeah.
And it's like we want to protect those resources, and that's part of our core purpose is respect the resources we have. If we have altitude and we want to give up altitude, it's, again, go to the personal level. If you're at altitude, I was having a talk with a young guy last night, and he said, I don't really like my job. And it's a good job. It's a 3-day-a-week job. He's making decent money at it. He doesn't really like the job. And he said, I wouldn't mind doing something different that paid less as long as I could be up here later. And that's a strategic thing that we do with our altitude, right? We can make an acquisition, we can invest in people that in a way takes away some of our resources, our financial resources by spending that money on investment.
Yeah.
But it has this payback in some period, and we do it strategically now.
Yeah.
And we drop that altitude strategically in service of a greater altitude in 3 years, 5 years. And that's kind of what our academy was when we did it. Like, this is going to be an expensive thing we do for 5 to 10 years, but we can't say we're walking away from it. Like, we as leaders, we got in a room and like, are we into this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we can't do this for 3 years.
Yeah.
And now it's become an expectation.
Yeah.
By the whole company that we are going to do this again, right? You're going to keep pumping these resources to us, these people, these young people that we want to now pour into and help fund our retirement as we get out, and we want to sell our stock back to the company. We need these young people here to be able to keep earning the money to buy that stock back from us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that it's such an essential thing that you're talking about, and the importance of that, and that investment in looking at it that way. I mean, and I love the altitude analogy because it's so important to your ability to do that, and it also, I think this is really important. We're talking about 100 years. If you're listening to this, I don't want you to be listening to this and be like, yeah, well, I'm barely keeping my wheels above the treetops. It's like, well, maybe that's where you are. I'm sure that your grandfather could tell some stories like that because you got to take off. You got to take off,
right,
and you got to get there. And we're at a story where they were even close to the treetops back when they're making these decisions, looking ahead to 2026. But the point is, if you have the vision and you're looking ahead, you can get there if you take the time to do those things.
Yeah. And you can see a lot further. Your attention can be diverted straight ahead, looking to the future. If you're a leader of a company or leaders in the company, your attention can be raised away from the treetops. Because if you're at the treetops and you lose power, the only alarm you have is the treetops.
Yeah.
If you're up at 32,000 feet in a commercial jet or whatever you're in, you can set alarms.
Yeah.
For when you lose altitude.
Exactly.
But so now you can take your attention, and put it more forward. And so if there is some kind of a disruption or failure, all your tasks don't get scrunched into a 30-second time frame.
Right.
So from a personal standpoint, if you've got some savings set up and you lose your transmission, that's just something you have to manage around.
Yeah.
If you've got no savings and you lose your transmission, you're in a little bit of a crisis. And the same with the company. If we don't have that altitude, if we don't have some margin of safety in our finances, and all of a sudden diesel goes up by a couple dollars a gallon like it has in the last few weeks,
Yeah.
this can be a real thing to a lot of small operators.
Yeah. And if you were in 2008, you know what that thing feels like.
No, it's bad.
I mean, yeah. Herb, what is the first question's easy. What is a mistake that you've made that you're willing to share with us that will bring value to people?
I've made so many. I mean, we'd be here for hours and hours, Joshua. So I would say the one mistake is I did not know what the hell a CEO does. I told you, I went to one semester of college, went out in the field, labored for a while, became a trainee foreman, became a superintendent, became a project manager, estimator. Then I left and started my own business, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
And so not understanding better. And then, then as we went further, and in, 15 years after that, bought the family business back that had been sold, and not really understanding what my role was. I really did not. And then the recession came, and so that's the first one, is like not knowing what a CEO, what the leader of the company is supposed to do. And that's really to look forward and not be tactical all the time.
Yeah.
Then the second one is a symptom of that, is when we went through the recession, we didn't, I bought the company in 2005. We did well for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And then a recession hits. And I've got a massive debt load.
Yeah.
The company I bought was 6 times bigger than mine.
Wait, so the recession hits and you have a massive debt load.
You're right.
Okay, keep going.
And so for the next 4 to 5 years, we were like the NFL team that didn't go to the draft.
Wow.
We did not invest in people. We did not recruit. And then, and that's, I can show you a graph I've created of our altitude.
Wow.
And we bled off altitude for years, but there was nothing strategically done in that time. It was just like, well, we're in a recession. What are we going to do? And not investing in that time, like Warren Buffett has a quote that's, when the stock market rains gold, you need to have a big bucket out.
Yeah.
Right. And when the labor market rains gold, you need to have a big bucket out. And not having a good, strong altitude coming into that period, so we could invest in people during that period and continue to recruit, that cost us so much when the economy came back and we got back into the market and we started taking more work than we could do. And I mean, our altitude kind of shot up a little bit and then we stalled.
Yeah.
Literally stalled.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's not having the right amount of margins of safety financially to be able to invest in the workforce in the way that we should have, because it cost us. We became employee owned in 2013, and that's kind of when the economy began to come back around, and it cost my employee owners a lot for that next 5 years because I didn't prepare us for that. So it's those two things: not knowing what the hell a CEO does, and a good CEO would have seen that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what was for those that are listening, maybe there's somebody that their company right now has got some low altitude and they're like, it's so hard for me. I feel like I can't even get my head up to think that way or to look that way. What was the triggering thing that you feel like you did that you were able to, when you were in that position, and since you were there, because I think that to become a good CEO, you either need to do what you did and learn the hard way, or you need to listen to conversations like this and hear it from people like yourself. So what was the pivot, the trigger? You said something to me the other day about, you changed 5 degrees and then the rest of it just all came through. Like, What was the trigger for you?
So the trigger, I would say, is in 2018, our strategic planning group got together, and we'd never done one.
Yeah.
We did annual planning
Yeah.
that looked for the next year, or maybe 18, 24 months. And I always reasoned that strategic planning was no good for a contractor because we don't know what's coming out for work. And that's a cop-out.
Yeah, maybe I said that same thing.
That's a cop-out,
Yeah.
because part of strategic planning is understanding what is working against you in the world.
Yeah.
And another big part of strategic planning is figuring out what to stop doing.
Yeah.
So, Ready Mix was a business we got into in 2010, right in the middle of the recession. But that was an opportunity that showed up, and it was like, this thing cost me for 10 years.
Yeah.
We never made money 1 year at it. And then finally in 2020, but it was 2018, the strategic planning group we brought in, and it was like, okay, now we've talked vision, and now I can say, okay, if that's where we're going, what do we got to do to get there?
Come on.
But without that longer vision,
Yeah.
it's really hard. And I talked to a guy last fall, and he says he's been in business 8 or 10 years, and he's just on screech, And what I see all around the industry now is people that got in business, they were an operator or a foreman or a superintendent, whatever, and they're like, hey, I can go do this. Anybody can do this. I'm going to go do this. And what I'm hearing from these people, almost in unison, is I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And what it's like they were an operator and they bought an 8-ton excavator and they could run that, they could do that, and all of a sudden they're doing 30, 40, $50 million worth of work a year, and they don't know what they're doing. And I can so empathize with where they're coming from with that. And what they've done is, in this construction economy we've had the last 8 or 10 years, is they're on a rocket. They knew how to run the excavator, but it turned into a rocket on them.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to change course. They don't know how to change altitude. They're just like hanging on. They're being dragged behind this rocket.
Yeah.
And their people are being, they're all hanging behind them. And there's a lot of people leading companies that are being crushed right now. When I say crushed, I mean crushed emotionally,
Yeah.
mentally, physically, relationally, because they can't manage the work and it affects all the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And I've had so many conversations this winter of people that are just like, can you give me one thing I can start doing? So
Yeah.
your question is, what can you start doing?
Yeah.
What's the vision?
Come on.
Where do you want to be in 10 years?
Yeah.
Because all of us are going to be out of business at some point in time.
Yeah.
So how do you want this exit to take place?
Yeah.
Do you want to sell to private equity? If you do, then there's a whole different management structure you need to set up so that your value is the best it can be when you go to private equity. Do you want to go ESOP? Do you just want to have an auction? Do you want to sell you sold to your employees? Do you want to do that? There's basically 4 ways. I just mentioned the 4 ways you can get out of business. And, most of those, a couple of those can work well. One, let's have the auction. That doesn't work well. So set the vision and then define what altitude can mean for you. What can get you those margins of safety? And I can tick down through a few of them, like balance sheet strength is one of them, right? So having some margin of safety in your finances, balance sheet strength, relationship with your bank, relationship with your bonding company, relationship with your team, with your crew morale. If your crew morale sucks, it doesn't matter what a lot of the other things are.
Boy, that's important.
So crew morale, alignment of leadership. Is everybody aligned with where we're going?
Yeah.
Because if you're not aligned, you're not going to get there. There's drag.
Yeah.
And if you can't either lead that drag to adjust to where you're going, you need to manage it out.
Yeah.
It's relationships with GCs. It's the pipeline that you see coming in for your work. It's the quality of the pipeline. It's the assets that you have and the quality of those assets and their ability to turn effort into cash.
Come on.
It's relationships with vendors. I know people that string their vendors out 60, 90, 120 days, and we've made a rule, pay them in 20 days.
Wow.
Because when I want a gate valve that's in New York State, I want the supplier to go, listen, we'll run and get that for you.
Yeah.
right? And when they know their money is coming every single 20 days, they'll turn themselves inside out for it. So that's, to me, altitude. Some of that is really subjective.
Yeah.
And some of it is really objective, like your balance sheet strength. There's different ways you can measure that. So, what does that mean? But like crew morale, that's a really subjective thing. I mean, you've got to have your ear to the ground.
Yeah.
And, that's the getting out of your truck,
Yeah.
not with a coffee,
Yeah.
with your boots tied and with your vest on and your
Yeah.
hard hat and safety glasses on, so people know that you're in there with them.
Yeah.
Those are the things to me that, like, if you're running a company, if you're leading a company, what is going to change? What's going to move the needle on all those things I just talked about?
Yeah.
And there's more. Different companies have different things.
Well, I mean, you talk about those things, and earlier you said to me that your grandfather in that one picture had more in common with George Washington than he did with you.
In a society, yeah.
In a society.
The day he was born.
You talk about leading, and George Washington is actually someone who I love. And not only is Sargent celebrating 100 years right now, our country is celebrating 250 years.
Right.
And, Washington, I believed in investing in the heart and pouring into people. When you look at his life and you see what he did, and then when you read about how he led on the battlefield, this is really interesting. He led from the front.
Mm-hmm.
He did not lead from the back. And so when you talk about wearing the vest, wearing the hard hat, walking the job, you're leading with the same things you're asking them to do. You're doing the same things. And when we lead that way, the people will line up to stand beside you.
I've seen leaders in our company.
Come on.
One time I was with a leader, and he drove up. He goes, "Man, dude, this guy doesn't have his safety glasses on." And he drove up he was cutting a piece of pipe, and he drove up right behind him, and he tooted the horn to get his attention. I said, "Okay, stop that. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Back up 50 feet. We're going to get out, put our stuff on. We're going to go over and talk to this guy."
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing.
Come on.
Like you can see that behavior being the kind of behavior that breeds dysfunction in the relationship between management and the people in the field.
Yeah.
And that's just so not what we want to be. And we had a conversation about that. Like, that's not us.
Yeah.
I know you're busy.
Yeah.
I know you're busy, but you got to care about that guy enough.
Yeah.
To say, I'm not that busy. I'm not so busy that I can't care about his safety.
Well, words matter. Let's not be busy. Let's be productive.
Yeah.
Let's be, productiveness is pulling back 50 feet, getting all that gear on and going and talking with him. Honking at the horn, that doesn't make that guy go, yeah, I want to change the way I'm doing this.
Right.
Is all that does is creates a division that you don't want to be there.
Yeah, it's animosity, and the next thing you know, there's just dissociation with like they're not engaged with the company brand, they're not engaged with where the company's going. It's just like the dude just pulled up here and honked the horn. Seriously?
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that gets talked about at coffee time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
way more than
it does.
Way more than if you backed up 50 feet to begin with and got out. Right?
Yeah.
They don't talk so much about that.
Yeah.
As they do the negative things, and those negative things. Mark Twain used to have a quote that a rumor gets halfway around the world before the truth puts its shoes on.
Yes.
And that's the same thing. That kind of thing travels halfway around the crew before you caring gets its shoes on.
Well, and if you're not telling the story about who you are, then people don't know that you care. If
you're not telling the story by your behaviors,
yes,
they're telling the story by your behaviors.
Absolutely. There it is. If you're not intentionally telling your story, it's being told. That's the reality of it. And it might be by that one bad behavior that one day, and you're not communicating the good stuff that you need to communicate, which is what we're talking about here today. So as we come to a close here, what's your vision? Where do you see Sargent 100 years from now?
Well, there's a lot of days between now and then.
Yeah.
36,500 days that we've got to survive.
Yeah.
And, the 100th anniversary book, the title of it is The Hard Work Starts Today.
Come on.
And that was a quote in the book my grandfather said to me, and I can't remember exactly when it was now, but I think it was when we bought the company back. And he said to me, "Man, the hard work starts today, doesn't it?"
Come on.
And so, I think it's important for us to have a vision.
Yeah.
I think we're talking in terms of 20-year increments. But I mean, I can't even, in the same way George Washington couldn't, and not to put me up on that pedestal, trust me on this, okay? But in the same way, he could never see what America is today.
Yeah.
It's hard to have, the 250 years is more than 100, but it's hard to have a vision that durable.
Yeah.
So I think we have to talk about what we want to be, the way we want to behave,
Yeah.
and the fact that we've got one of those panels on the wall says we're going to be fearless in the face of opportunity, but highly, highly attuned to the risks.
Come on.
And so that's what we've got to be. I want to be the company that's fearless in the face of opportunity, but highly tuned into the risks, because all opportunity is not equal.
Yeah.
We've got a job that we did, completed it last summer. It took us 5 years. We're 2 years overdue on it, and we lost multiple $1 million on it.
Wow.
And so everything is not opportunity. Everything that you see out there is not. So we need to tune into the risks, and we just did not do a good job on that one. And so I want to be a company that builds people. It's hard to have a durable company with fragile people. So in order for us to be the right company for ourselves, for our ownership structure, we have to build the people first.
Come on. Wow. Herb, I could sit here and talk with you for another 3 hours.
We'd probably need a bourbon.
Yeah. Absolutely. I so appreciate getting to hear this story. And I always am thanking people for stepping up to the line when we have finished the conversation. And when Chandler was on, I gave a little definition of what that is. And I want to do that again because I believe at Blackline, our vision is to lift the view of the skilled trades. And our mission is to communicate the value of the men and women who do the work. And when we're asking you to step up to the line, we're asking you to step up to the line and lift the view of the work that you're doing, lift the view of the men and women that you work with and the stories that need to be told so that the value of those men and women can be communicated. And so I want to say it this way here. I'm going to look at the brand that your grandfather started. Herb, thank you for stepping up to the line.
Yeah.
Herb, thank you for stepping up to the line.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing. And I hunted you down at Dirt World there a year and a half ago, and I said, and I'd been listening to some of your podcasts, and I think I came to you and said, thank you for doing this because it's such an important thing. Yeah. I mean, our people need to feel valued. They need to feel celebrated. And, and this idea that out there in society, it's like, oh, you're going to go in the trades. And I think what I would like to see is more companies. I guess I'll just put it this way, and I hope this does not sound boastful, but I want to be the kind of company that other people go, that's how you do it.
That's right.
And that's how you do it. That's how you value those people. 100%. That's how, at least if greater society doesn't value them, we ought to value each other. And as companies, we ought to value these people that are building for those guys. And we ought to be the kind of companies that if there's a Thanksgiving or whatever, and Uncle Joe is talking to Aunt Jane, and Aunt Jane's trying to figure out what her son's going to do, Uncle Joe goes, if you get with the right company, the trades is the place to go.
Come on, I agree.
The trades is the place to go, and let's do that. So
there's a phrase on your mug there that says "trades or die."
Yeah,
and it's actually we totally plagiarized Benjamin Franklin's first political cartoon where it said "join or die" for the United States of America. Yep. And we're saying that if you're in the industry, tell the stories. It's trades or die, because without the work that these men and women do, we don't flush the toilet, we don't drink clean water, we aren't warm in the winter and cool in the summer. We don't get to live the lives that we live. And so it's important. It matters. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
stepping up to the line.